So now we begin our sessions post-lunch with a very unusual book, which is a mix of a travelogue and sports. Gully Gully travels around India during the 2023 World Cup. With this book, author Aditya Iyer explored the profound impact of cricket on India, revealing cricket's role in shaping the nation's identity. This is his first book. Aditya writes travel, sports and human interest stories for Open magazine. He began his career with Indian Express and has covered several tournaments like Cricket World Cup, Tennis Grand Slam and Football World Cup. Leading the conversation is seasoned broadcaster Aroop Ghosh, whose love for cricket triumphs most things. So please welcome on stage Aroop and the author Aditya Iyer.
Okay, very warm welcome to everyone here. And thanks for staying on post-lunch. I had a very frugal one, just to stay awake. I read Aditya Iyer's book, Gully Gully, every page. It's a terrific read. And it's a pleasure to have him here alongside. So, before I go across to Aditya, this book is about the ODI World Cup. We all know how it ended for India and the heartbreaks that followed. But what he has done very interestingly is that he has woven travelogue writing. He's written about every state or the city that the match was held. He speaks about Lucknow, which is my home state. It's very evocative. And what I want to begin is a quote of his which caught my eye. So it's from Mir Taki Mir. And he says, "Bahut arzu thi gali ki teri. So yahan se lahu mein nahakar chala." In English, it means I had a great desire to visit your lane, and now I return bathed in blood. Aditya, were you metaphorically or literally bathed in blood?
Yeah, pretty much literally bathed in blood by the end of it, because, you know, we saw how it ended. It was one of the great tragedies, right? Like, this is a team that went and destroyed absolutely everybody. But right at the very end, when, you know, we thought that we're going to have the perfect ending, and we did not get that perfect ending. So I think a lot of people felt like they were bathed in blood by the end of it. Players, fans, spectators, people in the press, everybody.
So are you a fan of Shero Shairi also?
Absolutely.
You are. What made you choose the travelogue format to do a book on cricket? Because quintessentially it is cricket in the forefront, but somewhere as you, let me say, as I started reading this book, the travelogue part started growing on me, which became more and more interesting because you are introducing a city or introducing certain characters. Did it come from you alone? Was it your publisher who was also involved?
No, I wish I could take credit for the idea. It's been done before. Cricket travelogues is the way, you know, people have gone for a long time. Rahul Bhattacharya wrote a fantastic one called Pandits from Pakistan in the 2003-04 tour, where he, you know, it's an Indian visiting Pakistan during a very historic test series, which India ends up winning. But he was more interested in the cities and the places and what makes Pakistan Pakistan while India travels there. And Mike Marcuse, of course, did it for the 1996 World Cup in a book called War Minus the Shooting. So these were my two great inspirations. So I'm not the first one to do it, but you know, the era is fresh, the team is fresh, our dominance is fresh. You know, we didn't quite play cricket like this in the 90s and the 2000s. And I just thought this will be a fantastic way, because in the very first press conference, Rahul Dravid spoke about how it's a khushiyon ka tyohar. You know, it's more than just a World Cup. It's a little team traveling from city to city, covering the expanse of India, and we're so many countries in one. And, you know, it's kind of one of the only uniting factors. So I thought, why not use them literally as a vehicle to tell the story of a country?
Let's begin with Chennai, and we may not be able to hit each and every state, but this Chennai bit was quite interesting for me because he interviewed Sarvanan Hari, who is the Dhoni fan. You would have seen him painted in yellow with the headgear and all of that. And your narrative is about how Sarvanan Hari took to it almost by accident, then something happened, it worked, and he actually had access to Dhoni after a point in time, which is a remarkable story, which ends with his daughter being named by Dhoni.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, it was slightly tricky, right? So in each of these places, I kind of wanted a voice on the periphery of cricket who kind of represent that city, that state, that culture, while also telling the story of the city and being around cricket at the same time, right? So I was lucky enough to meet this yellow painted fellow. As you'd have seen him in the IPL, he's, he wears this big wig and like a mustache, and he's got Dhoni written on him. He's fully painted in yellow. And in many ways, I thought he was representative of the culture in Tamil Nadu, which, tends to idol worship. We know what happens before Rajnikant movies, or now, with Vijay or whoever these new actors are. This Pal Abhishekam, and they also make their superstars into their chief ministers. So I thought it was very representative of that culture in cricket, because, we do have a pan-Indian guy in Sudhir Gautam who travels with the team, the tricolored painted fellow. But I wanted someone who speaks about that particular culture in Tamil Nadu, and Sarvanan was very nice, and and it's also slightly tricky, because when you speak to him, you kind of see his fanaticism, and as a writer, you're not supposed to judge it, but when he says stuff like, I had a child, and my wife and this newborn were in a government hospital, and I texted Dhoni's manager to tell him that, I've had a child, and the manager says, do you know what, mine is actually in Chennai. So he abandons the wife and the child, and he runs to Dhoni, to the hotel. And at that point, when he's saying that, I'm like, what the, how's this even possible? But you can't let that come in the way when you're writing it, because it's a great story. So the story ends with him meeting Dhoni, and Dhoni finding out that he has a child, who's a few hours old, and says, please go back to the hospital. And the guy falls on Dhoni's feet and says, I'm not going to leave till you name my child first, and has to start with M because of Mahi. So Dhoni quickly, or D, sorry, for Dhoni, and Dhoni quickly names the child so that he can go back to his wife and his child. So it's crazy. I mean, these are guys who really love their cricket, right? And often they're seen as lunatics, or people not like us. We know how to watch it, we go to stadiums, but everyone has a story to tell. And which is why I thought, if you kind of tell the story of cricket through its fans, while, the central narrative is, of course, cricket.
Sure.
You engage so many more people in the story of India, which is essentially what this book is.
Aditya, I always like to ask authors, particularly young authors like you, as to that your craft, is beautifully written book, is the travelogue part. Now, for a lot of budding writers in India, and this is the Ekamra Sports Lit Fest, so here the main purpose of the Ekamra Sports Lit Fest is to encourage sports writing, and this is what we've been doing now in season 6. I'm saying we, taking the liberty, because I have been playing a small part in it. But explain to us about the craft. You went in knowing that you're going to do a travelogue around this. How do you observe? How do you take notes? How much of it is mental retention? And can you, one of your strengths would be a strong mental recall?
Yes, of course. I mean, luckily, one of the good things about, me choosing this profession of writing is my memory is quite decent. So, you need to remember a lot of things, but if you don't have it, you have to take a hell of a lot of notes. So during this World Cup, the whole idea, I knew the cricket that I watch will be covered in so many match reports and stuff like that, but how can you write about the game differently from the way it's being reported fabulously in so many of these cricket websites now, right? CricBuzz, Cricinfo, what are you bringing to the table? So again, I wanted to bring, the way I watched the matches was the way the fan in the stands would, right? So if he or she is having a problem with, getting into the ground, or what it feels like once you're in there, or the madness of first seeing the bed of green and the great blue sky and these specks of players in between who are going to dazzle you for the next few hours. So take the game from there. Just chronicle it from there on. But I can't lie. My idea was always the travelogue, and use something to tell the story of, this place that you traverse through. And nothing nicer than cricket for that. So
anyone who wants to be a travelogue writer should have two things. One is retention memory and the ability to take notes.
Or take copious amounts of notes. That really helps. Yeah.
And yeah, you can see that I've done a lot of bit of my homework, stuck these little reminders in here, because what I want to do is, there are some interesting small vignettes I want to just pick off and get Aditya's reaction. One is, of course, our Kedar Jadhav, well-known player for India, and his fascination for Salman Khan. did the Dabang dance, and then he later says that he stayed with Salman Khan. He was introduced by Dhoni to Salman. Then he stayed with Salman almost up to 15 days in his farmhouse. And here is an interesting quote which I want to share with you. Then we get Aditya. And he says, they say don't meet your heroes, but I would like to tell everyone that if your hero is Salman Khan, then definitely go and meet him. He is a bigger hero in real life than he is on the silver screen. Before you react, मुझे थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा लगा.
But that's Kedar. I mean, he's honest enough to say it. So I was lucky enough to be on that tour of Zimbabwe when, you know, the second string team went in 2015, I think this was, led by Ajinkya Rahane, and Kedar got his first ODI 100 there, and there was no other reporter. And I remember standing with two Zimbabwean journalists, and we saw Kedar like drop his bat and do a dance. And I'd completely forgotten about it. And Tristan Holm, this other journalist at the press conference, goes like, can you ask him about what he was doing? So I was like, Kedar, wo kya tha? Kya kar rahe the? And he was like, aapne dabang nahi dekha? Ye to dabang dance hai. So he basically just inserted his thumbs into his trousers and did the dance, right? And it became big. Now, because we reported on
Not
it...
the trouser, the belt.
But you don't have a belt in cricket, unlike in baseball. So
Okay.
So he did that, and then I think it was picked up back home, and like his Salman love was known, and he told Dhoni about it. And when he was telling me that he actually met Salman Khan, you know, it's like when normal people meet cricketers, right? Like he froze a little bit. I think like he was kind of like playing back those 15 days in Panvel, in his Panvel farmhouse with Salman. Means a lot. I mean, like, you know, whatever floats your boat, but Salman certainly floats his.
Let's hop across to Rishi Dhawan. He also played for India, and you met him in Dharamshala. So he tells Aditya, over and above all the discussions that they had. So here's the quote, which is initially in Hindi. हमारे यहाँ एक कहावत है, क्रिकेट एक ऐसा गेम है जो हंसाता कम है और रुलाता ज़्यादा है. In English, it means there's a saying that goes, cricket is a sport that makes you sad a lot more than it makes you happy. It's a very intelligent one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it strikes a chord in two ways. Like, A, you don't score 100 and take a 5 every day. So most of the days in cricket, you're basically going through the motions failing in the conventional sense. And hence, when you actually get your landmark score or help your team win, it means so much more to you. And B, this is the story of Indian cricket, right? A lot of these players, 95% of them, aren't from you know, any kind of affluence. The entire family kind of designs themselves around making this one guy or one girl, now hopefully, you know, make their dreams come true. And to do that, the entire family sacrifices. You know, I was talking earlier today, where I was told that, you know, like even things like, you take my extra roti, right? So the guy, like it's a double-edged sword, like it can cut both ways. The guy either succumbs under this pressure to, you know, this big dream of making it for India, or it really fuels him. And someone like Rishi Dhawan, who's the only person to make it from the state of Himachal, which now has so much infrastructure because of Anurag Thakur and, you know, the money being pumped into the HPCA, has still only produced one male cricketer. I do know there's a female cricketer too, but one, right? Like, and this stadium and this infrastructure was built in 2003. So what does it take for a guy like him to make it to the Indian dressing room? And he was very, very honest about it. He said it basically just takes junoon, it takes passion.
Let's hop across to Lucknow. Ravikant Shukla in the under-19 team, he captained people like Rohit Sharma and some of the big guns, like there are one or two other names. Anyway, so he says that he never made it, despite the fact, Shikhar Dhawan, that I was selfless and didn't care for individual glory as much as winning. Now, the moment you hear that, it hurts a bit that the guy didn't make it despite being the captain. But then under 19 captains, there are many such cases of them getting lost. It's very unfortunate.
But none before or after, you know, because before him, it was Rohit Sharma who made it. Before that, it was Kaif who made it, you know, who won the World Cup just like Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli was immediately after Ravikant Shukla, also won the World Cup. Both of them went on to play for India and had like fantastic careers. Him more so than Kaif.
Unmukt Chand disappeared.
Yeah, that was 12, just after Kohli. But yeah, so this guy was kind of an anomaly at that point, and it was crazy, right? Like, he has captained Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma has come to his town, has come to Lucknow as a guy who's going to go and, at that point, looked ready to win the World Cup for India, and nobody even recognizes him. And he used to captain Rohit when he first played a World Cup for India, right? And as luck would have it, because I was wondering how to broach this subject, and the two of us are standing outside a chart house, and as does happen, this is not even serendipity because the World Cup's going on in India. In Lucknow, a guy rides by with Rohit 45 written on his back, and both Ravikant and I look at that shirt, and then I look at him, and I don't even have to say anything. And he goes like, I know what you're trying to ask, we'll talk about it. So, and he does with a lot of honesty, about how, I mean, he doesn't remember those times as an under-19 player when he captained Rohit. He only does when people remind him, they say, you were his captain, what does it feel like? So he says, every day when I see Rohit's success, I'm not jealous. But when you guys come along and you remind me and you ask me, what did that feel like? You promoted Cheteshwar Pujara up there. You could have gotten the runs. And then I feel a pinch. I think, I didn't make it, but at least I have my life now and I have a life of cricket.
I'll ask you a cricket question purely, which is that when we look at those who didn't make it, and there are many, but if you're talking about UP, and Ravikant is from UP, so you have Suresh Raina, you have Mohammad Kaif, you have RP Singh, and so many others who made it. But if you look back in time, then there was the very strong Bombay club, and then the Karnataka club, which came in when Dravid and all these other, there were
Prasad,
6 of
Kumble,
them.
Srinath,
So was it about, what gives them a push? Is it all about mental aggression as sort of projected by Virat Kohli in recent years, brutal aggression on the field? What about temperament and all this selflessness chat should be just flushed out?
No, I think it's a bit of all of it. Like, it usually takes one kind of a leader to come out of a system, and then he draws everybody else either towards him or the route that he took to make it to the very top, right? As you rightly said, in Bombay, we had our Vengsarkars and our Gavaskars, and they, of course, caused everybody else for so long, all the way into the 90s, with Tendulkar and Manjrekar and Agarkar, all of them to kind of follow the same path, which is go to Shivaji Park, try and make it from there. Even if you don't meet Ramakant Achrekar, you have a coach like him. And the system kind of feeds itself. The ecosystem is all pushed and honed towards one thing. Then it happened with Karnataka, like you said, UP, then it happened with Delhi, right? Like with Virat doing so well, you had so many guys coming through immediately after. So I mean, it's self-belief, it's what that one, the pioneer does for everybody else. But I mean, it's a bit of everything actually. You can never really pinpoint one thing out, which is great again for when you're writing, because you're not giving solutions, you're just showing what things look like. I mean, what forms a cricket culture in a city or a state.
I'll hop across to Shreyas Iyer. He's a strange, magical figure. He can do a lot of stuff, but keeps on failing on the field. You've had a subtle dig at him, and I'll read that bit out. So this is Shreyas Iyer being asked in a press conference that he's unable to play the pull shot well. He got out to it many times. So this is his answer, which Aditya has put, that I know how to tackle it. He's obviously pissed off that he's been asked this question. So he says, I know how to tackle it. It's just that when I go to hit some shots, you are bound to get out, and sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not. And then I'll just shorten it. But in my mind, I know there's no problem. Then Aditya writes, after uttering that answer, riddled with statements in contradiction with each other, Iyer huffs out of the room. What do you make of Shreyas Iyer, a talent like that?
I mean, he scored nearly 400 runs in the 4 matches leading up to the final, right? Like, he proved all his detractors wrong. Like, there were a bunch of them in the press, especially in the beginning when he kept getting out to the short ball. But that was the first time he tackled it well. I think it was against Sri Lanka and Bombay, where he got to 70 or 80 or something like that, and he came prepared. I also know the BCCI media manager really well, and he's a close friend of a lot of ours. So he did tell me that he was, one of the great things about the BCCI today, at least at the interaction with the media level, is there's a lot of transparency. So he told me that he was prepping all the cricketers with the tough questions that would come, and obviously the tough question about Iyer was going to be the short ball. So Iyer came in preparing for the question, quite like he was preparing for the short ball in the field, and he fumbled a little bit, as anyone would when there's so much glare and mics in front of you. But he proved his point, and then he got 100 and 180 and a 70. So yeah.
Okay, I've already got one signal to wrap this up. But before I do, there are 2 things. One is, you've mentioned about how Saurav Ganguly, when in one of the World Cups that I think the 2011 World Cup, or one of the trophies that India won. So he's standing there
At the Wankhede. Yeah.
at the Wankhede outside the com box, and he's very emotional. And then you asked him how he felt later in that interview, in your interview with him, and he says, yes, even though I had finished playing for my country, I felt that I was a part of it. These were my boys too. What is the kind of emotion you gauge from him, because he's usually known as a pretty cold fish?
Yeah. So he was very emotional when he was talking about this. I mean, I think I obviously might have softened him a little bit by talking about like leadership and captaincy for a long time. So he was really into it. In fact, like, you know, that interview was cut short in the middle. And it was cut short by Barkha Dutt, but he said, like, please, she can wait for 15 more minutes, I want to finish this.
Yeah.
So he was really into it, and I did see him there by the boundary rope when I was standing next to this fantastic journalist, Sharda Ugra, and we both noticed that Ganguly looked just as emotional as, like, say, Tendulkar or Dhoni or Yuvraj on the field. So I always thought I should ask him that, and even when he was talking about it, he kind of showed me the goosebumps on his hand. So it was his team. These are the players that he fought for back in 2011 at least.
Aditya, I'll ask you to read out an extract, because all of you might enjoy him reading this out, because it's a very well-written piece, and coming from him, it would do justice. So over to you.
Thank you. So basically just a small build-up, like the World Cup is over and this is, India's lost, and this is just a wrap-up of the travelogue itself. So anyway. The streets are desolate, the shutters of all shops pulled down, and there are hardly any vehicles on the road. The host city of the World Cup final is now a ghost town. The sight or sound of the promised firecrackers are non-existent. By the time I reach my Oyo room, a driver's rest house really, located on the shoulder of the highway leading towards Rajkot, it is very late. I pour myself a generous share of Kamlesh's Red Label, take a seat in the courtyard facing the highway, throw on my headphones and watch the trucks pass by. There is a shiver in the music, something of a crackle. When I take my headphones off, there is nothing but silence. Then I see it before I hear it, from the corner of my left eye. The glorious explosion of light and colors in the sky. Someone is bursting crackers. I forget about the fully exposed bottle of liquor in the courtyard of a dry state and rush out onto the service road, following the intermittent bursts in the sky. A few minutes later, I reach them. A father and son, I assume, the older one in a long kurta and the boy in a knockoff India shirt with Virat written at the back, both of them firing rockets from a bottle. A large white polythene bag containing long boxes lies on the road. The bottle is hazy and smoke emits from its mouth. They look startled to see me. The man frozen in his position with a burning agarbatti in one hand and an unlit rocket in the other. I smile to end the tension. Are you celebrating Australia's win? I ask, and the man shakes his head and places the long neck of the rocket in the bottle. It slants. No, he says, without looking at me, playing with the base of the wick, or watt, as the timer thread is known in these parts. We bought these to celebrate India winning the World Cup. My son was upset, and I didn't want to store them for another occasion, so we're bursting them anyway. Then he holds his son's hand and aids him in lighting the watt. The object fizzles into the night and blasts into 1,000 burning fragments. I sit down on the dusty road and wrap my forearms around my knees and watch them for a while, meticulously going through the explosives in the boxes, one by one. All three of us craning our necks upward each time to watch the momentary fire illuminate a purple night, otherwise torched dimly by highway lamps and a waxing crescent moon. And I think to myself, this is how it ought to be remembered, this World Cup and India's sparkling run. Rohit, Virat and Shami, Bumrah and Iyer too, as something big and vivid, filling up the skies. They were indeed starlight or something astral, like a comet, dazzling then disappearing. The tears begin to flow just as a mongrel disturbed by the sounds emerges from a nearby gutter, circles a cozy spot on the service lane and lies down.
Excellent.
Well, that was an amazing conversation and we thoroughly enjoyed it. Though we are running a bit late, so we won't be able to take the questions on this session. But thank you so much, Aditya, and thank you so much, Arup, for coming here.
Pleasure.
And we really enjoyed the conversation, and Arup will need you again for the session. Now we'll before we move on to the next session, can you please stand together for a photo opportunity? Thank you. Thank you. A huge round of applause for Aditya and Arup.